Macho John Madden back at one of my regular stopping points. This is maybe the most regular spot for me to stop on our walks. Mustafa and I have been out to the far point and we're almost back into town. And this is a barbecue place that gets used once or twice a week is all. And just over my shoulder, what I thought was an abandoned building is actually a Pentecostal temple. I do want to come to church there sometime. Big fields out there. So we're on to part 4 of me and physical courage. It's a pretty great story. It amazes me, like, who is this guy? I'm up in Appalachia. The COVID is hit. This is just a couple months after the Allen story. COVID is hit. Asheville is shut down. My friend, who I call Petula, has a lovely house out on the side of a mountain with a walk-in basement apartment that's free. She encourages me to get out there, and I went out. Asheville people, progressives, had a lot of judgments about Appalachian people. Asheville is right on the spine of the Blue Ridge Mountains, around 2,500 feet, but all stretching north and in every direction from Asheville is what I call deep Appalachia. And to the north of there is what they refer to as the high mountains, peaks that are 6,000 feet and above. And that's where I mostly spent my time. But my stepping stone was 2 months with my friend, just a little bit up outside of Weaverville, the gateway to the mountains. But it's definitely, if you get out of the town of Weaverville, Barnardsville was even closer to her, and it was much more, quotes, redneck. And I learned to really like the guys out there. But the first run-in I had with one was I was in a convenience store, and I guess I asked for something in a way that sounded too entitled and city-ish for this guy who was at the counter. And he mouthed off to the cashier about me, and I heard it. And I said, "You are not a part of this conversation, Jack." I love insulting with the Jack. And it worked, caught him. He meekly walked out saying, "My name isn't Jack." So I knew it had worked. Another instance where it worked was in Asheville. I had picked up my first of 7 homeless waifs. I continued my thing of taking people in off the street, and Eric's thing of homeless hookers. She was not essentially a hooker. She was an awfully sweet girl, young, 23, very smart, very funny, addicted. But I took care of her. I wanted to let her dry out. And she had a lot of problems, and I was really determined. I really loved her. After many months of having just a dog to take care of. And I knew that had helped me a lot. Suddenly and we had even been trying to adopt a feral cat, because my dog liked cats. That was never successful. But the feral cat I ended up with was a woman named Sam, and she was a wild child. We were parked in West Asheville, out behind the Westville pub, parking lot back there overnight. And in the morning, I get out, she's sleeping. I was still letting her use the bed in the back of the van. I learned eventually that was not I needed a boundary where I would have the bed. But I was sleeping in one of the captain's chairs. And in early morning, I get out to take a pee, go around behind, and I'm peeing against this fence. And this voice, there was a guy younger and bigger than me, sitting behind the row of stores there. And he says, "What are you doing with my fence?" And my response was, I'm pissing on your goddamn stupid fence. It's pretty obvious, isn't it?" And we had a couple of exchanges. He tried to intimidate me, but did not succeed. I walked around to the front of the building to go, there's a store up there. As I'm walking back, I see him, and I start to laugh. And he says, "Oh, you think it's funny, huh?" And I said, "I think it's fucking hysterical." Not intimidated in the least. All of his attempts to intimidate me were falling flat. I was glad that Sam had heard all that in the van, because I wanted her to know that in addition to the nice, understanding guy I was with her, she had a big stick in her hip pocket and that I would keep her safe. And that's really the way that felt to me. Another one was back in Elizabethton, and if my friend Christopher listens to this one, he's living near Elizabethton now. It's way up in Tennessee. It was the far point of our trip. It's amazing to me that I actually know someone who goes to Elizabethton. But there was a guy who was a barber. I walked into his barber shop and I didn't like his vibe. He was a big macho, 40-ish, strapping gym rat guy, and I didn't like his attitude, so I walked out. But this is crazy. There was a girl there in the beauty salon who practiced some natural technique, not Botox, for getting rid of the lines on your face. And I don't really have many. But back then, for some reason, it still appealed to me, and I was going back to talk to her about that. And on my way in, he accosts me because it turns out he owned the beauty salon. And he says, and back then I was having some kind of physical condition that was causing me to have weak spells. And it passed without ever understanding what it was. But in the middle of it, it was pretty serious. I would boom, lay down wherever I was. And I had one that morning, and I'd been so weak I could barely stand that morning. And I still was not super strong. Today he does not have his cart, and the dog is walking behind. I hope I got that. And he accosts me in the hallway and says, I want you to stay away from my girls. And I think what pissed me off was his attitude towards his girls. That pissed me off. And the whole thing, and him attempting to intimidate me, really already at that point just is not something that anybody can get away with me. And I said something, and he said, yeah, maybe I'll give you something you don't want. And I was enraged. You know the David Banner, isn't it David Banner, the mild-mannered doctor who turns into the Hulk and says, don't make me angry? Yeah, that's my line. Because I saw red. And I stood up tall and straight and said, try me, motherfucker. He didn't. He didn't. He knew better. He knew he was dealing with something he didn't know what it was. So that's the way it's been for me. That's the way it's been for me. You cannot make me back down. Guy in Chicago pulled a gun on me in his front yard because I had taken shelter from the rain under his porch. Polish guy, northwest side of Chicago, but all paranoid. Pulls his gun, screaming at me to get out of there. And I said, I'll go when the rain stops. He's screaming, I'm going to shoot you, I'm going to shoot you. He went around behind me, and I didn't know how close he was, and something said he could pull the trigger easier if he's not looking you in the eye. So I left, went out in the rain, my little chihuahua. But on the way out, I insulted him. On the way out, I said, did you never go to kindergarten? Share. S-H-A-R-E, share. You don't know Jack. So that's the way I am. If I choose to not have the fight because they're armed and I'm not, I'm still going to insult them. I am. I've got other stories about that. Yeah. Maybe I will tell that story. Mission Hospital, security guard, Buncombe County Sheriff, menaced me with a gun. I didn't back off. Enough to not get shot or have my privileges or get locked up in that psych unit, but I didn't back off. I'll tell that story.